Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica, Imperialis and to today's video. Today is episode 146 of Adeptus Podcastus. We are now formally in the 150 home straight and things are coming together, I will say that. I'm looking forward to that show very much. Joining me as always is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
Hello everyone, I'm ill again. Yay, my body wants to kill me.
Yeah, you and Papa Nurgle are far too good friends. It's getting weird.
I should stop going around his house for tea, that kind of thing. But hey.
Aye. And our special guest is a returning guest who hasn't been on the show for a very long time, but certainly a recognizable avatar on the podcast, someone whose picture on the table very much got everyone's attention. Ladies, gentlemen, zealots of all ages and everything in between, I present you with the one, the only, LeakyCheese.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for having me back on Adeptus Podcastus. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm racking my brain about how long ago it was that you were on.
Episode 71.
71!
Was that 2019?
Probably.
Yeah, it feels a long time ago.
70, 140. Yeah, it's somewhere in the region of about 3 years ago. So it has been a fair old while. So for the viewers who have joined us in that time, and for those who are perhaps not on certain social media platforms and so are less aware of who and what you're all about, would you mind just introducing yourself for the viewers?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I'm LeakyCheese. I have a YouTube channel called LeakyCheese where I suppose I'm best known for my content around modelling, and in particular making Forge World vehicles for Horus Heresy, which is my big gaming passion in terms of like what I'm into in the hobby. But I like all parts of the wargaming hobby, and I've been in it for quite some time. So yeah, I'm a little bit old in the tooth compared to you young whippersnappers. But yes, I'm on YouTube, and I'm also active on Twitter and Instagram as well.
Yep, there will be links in the description as relevant if you fancy some heresy of the Horus variety. And yes, that's straight out of your Twitter bio.
It is, yes.
Part of the reason that Rem and I wanted to get you back on the show around this moment is particularly because of exactly that, what with Horus Heresy 2nd edition and all the reveals that have been happening in recent times. And I guess we kind of wanted to get your input on how you're feeling about the whole thing.
Yeah, fantastic. And perhaps, in that regard, it made sense to, not have me on for 3 years, because it has been a little bit of a barren desert in terms of heresy activity. But now it's all starting to happen again. So there's lots to talk about.
Indeed. We'll start on a modelling front, since that's where the news lies, and we might have a bit of a speculate in the follow-up. So there have been 2 Heresy Thursdays, that's what they're calling it, since the last Podcastus. And we got a look at 2 new plastic miniatures for the upcoming edition. The first was a plastic Praetor painted in Imperial Fist colours with a looks like Templar cross inside their iron halo, and one of the most elaborate mohawks I've seen outside of a Stormcast Eternal.
Is this C. Barbarella head?
Helmeted or not, it's got the quaff either way.
It is a crest of distinction, isn't it? Yes, a new. This is one of 2 Praetor miniatures that Games Workshop have recently previewed, or specifically Warhammer community. Mm-hmm. The first being one painted in Sons of Horus colours.
Oh yes, I remember.
with the big that guy with the big axe, and then the second one is this Imperial Fist with the sword and the Volkite charger, if I recall correctly. And yes, the head choice he has this supersized crest, and then there's a unhelmeted version, but it still has the crest on the sort of skull cap. And yeah, that's why I said it. I thought it was what happens when a Space Marine meets a film Barbarella. It's quite funny, really.
Yeah, you'll forgive me if that reference sails over my young whippersnapper head.
Well, you need to get with a bit of classic cinema there.
Rem gets on me enough about all of this.
But yeah, watch Barbarella so you can just appreciate that joke.
I'll add it to my list. I'll put it underneath Akira at the bottom of the bin. Right. What was interesting, though, and we commented on this when the Sons of Horus one was revealed, it's both of these Praetors are very faction-specific. Like, the Sons of Horus one could not be a loyalist model unless you did some work on it. And by the same token, this Imperial Fist very much feels like a loyalist. If you're going to make it a traitor, I feel like you'd have to do a few different bits to it. Obviously, you need to change the helmet because it's got the Aquila on it, and there's an Aquila sort of stylized on the belt buckle. It feels like there's a loyalist and a traitor Praetor, rather than just being, here is a Praetor, pick one you like the look of and have fun with it. I don't know.
The ironic thing being that they're advertised as being, like, as generic Praetors.
Indeed.
Well, now, these are good observations, and it's perhaps worth thinking a little bit about the background to the heresy and the way faction icons are depicted on them. And it's perhaps not so clear-cut as you would imagine.
It's not even necessarily
as you
that,
imagine in 40K.
It's not even necessarily that, because, like, if you look at the one that's painted as a Son of Horus, like, can you really imagine that particular model, say, in, like, an Ultramarine or a Blood Angel army, with that massive cleaver and the top knot and, the skulls, and a trophy rack kind of thing on his back?
It's not that it couldn't be done, but I feel like I would want to do some work to it to make it look a bit more loyalist. And this one, I feel like I need to traitor up. That's my personal opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you see, looking at previous Praetor miniatures, so the ones that are non-faction specific, and this is also true of some of the other miniatures as well, you do get what you might call to be imperial iconography on them. And I think part of the heresy is there's some uncertainty as to what the factions exactly are in a way. Because when Horus declares, when Horus starts his big rebellion, he's kind of like fighting it, but he's fighting it to control the Imperium. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, in a alternative universe where Horus defeated the Emperor and established his own Imperium, he could well have kept the Imperial Eagle as an Imperial badge. It's not outside of the realm of possibility.
I don't think it's the iconography. I think it's just the weapon style, and it's a very clean look at this nobleman with a raised sword aloft and all this, and then evil man with, I know I'm stereotyping, I know I am, of massive whack-off axe and malicious-looking, like, hulking posture and all of that. Absolutely, you're right, and I think it would be very interesting to see what Horus would have done with the Imperium, especially if he weren't fully off the chaotic deep end by the end of it. I think that's an interesting story to tell. Not saying anything to Mr. 40K Theories in the corner.
But it's like, if you compare them to, like, the generic Praetors from Forge World, like, they're painted up as Death Guard, yet the models themselves wouldn't look out of place and say, like, Ultramarine, Blood Angel, or Sons of Horus, Imperial Fist, or whatever. They could fit in pretty much any legion. But the one that's painted as the Sons of Horus from the new, reveal, I think the only loyalist legion I can think he would actually probably fit in would probably be White Scars, and that's purely because of the top knot and trophy rack.
Yeah, you could maybe get away with Warhounds as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you see, I could see
maybe Iron Hands.
The one, I was just about to say that. I could very definitely see them as an Iron Hand. The chains and the medallions and the axe. That's quite Iron Handy, if you will. I suppose one thing as well is, do you remember the cinematic trailer that they did for the Horus Heresy? I just forget, was it a month ago now?
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
So within that, there is a scene where you see one of the Sons of Horus Praetors, and he's armed with the axe. So it's a guy that we were talking about, but he's wearing a helmet. Yeah, so he's got his Mark 6 helmet on with the crest. Now, if you think about that in the miniature form, and I suspect we're going to get a helmeted head for this guy, then that transforms the miniature to some degree. Yeah,
True.
Taking off the head with the top knot instantly shifts the perception as to which legion it could be for. I think, and if you look at him, he's got the skull rack on his back, shall we say? But upon that, there's a set of wings as an insignia or an icon. So, although he is a son of Horus, how they've depicted him, there is still some evidence there of imperial iconography. And to turn this idea on its head for the imperial fist painted one, how about imagining that guy painted in Empress Children colours? I'd suggest he would fit perfectly into that scheme and the theme of that legion.
Yeah, I see it.
So, I think one of the things I always find to try avoid doing with any miniature that Warhammer community previews is almost like to try look underneath the paint scheme, because the paint scheme leads your mind down a certain path of expectations and perceptions. But
especially when it's so bright bloody yellow.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and let's be honest, the Imperial Fist scheme is very in your face, isn't it? But if you try to sort of imagine it, well, how might this guy look like as, say, a Raven Guard or a Night Lord? And it's not impossible. And who knows? We've got the picture of him with this quite impressive power sword, but may get an alternate weapon. And even if he doesn't get an alternate weapon, you could easily change it for something else, like an axe.
Yeah.
Give him an axe, and he's a White Scar straight away.
Yeah, I think you do make a very good point about looking beneath the paint scheme, and this is especially true of the Forge World Heresy miniatures, because especially the old Forge World style is a very unique style, especially because they like using their weathering powders and things like that. They have a very different style to the Heavy Metal team that do the Games Workshop miniatures, if you will. And it is quite interesting. The one model that sticks with me is Magnus the Red, because when I got my Magnus the Red, I loved the miniature when I saw it, but when I actually saw it with the paint off in front of me, I was like, oh. And my brain started running in 100 new ways. I was still painting it the same way as I was going to, but my brain started sparking off new ideas. And I'm looking around at my paint station, and I'm thinking about some of my Lumineth, because I don't like the really bright white Lumineth colour scheme. But
I see.
But with my Blade Lords, with their paint off, I've painted one of them, and it does kind of transform the miniature. And I think you do make a very good point that I think neither of us had fully considered about, well, okay, yes, we have this perception of the miniature, but the paint scheme and what we know of that paint scheme is influencing our opinion on the miniature as a result. You do make a really good point there. And I think certainly there are certain leaders that they will fit in on both sides of the argument. Yeah. One model that won't have that problem is the Spartan.
Oh gosh, well, no, what do we call it? The Legion Iron Chariot, I think it was called. Yeah, the Legion's Iron Chariot. Yeah, finally, after years and years, just this week of begging people pleading for their lives after building a resin one. Yes, we got a view of the upcoming plastic Spartan assault tank kit. So this is like a really big deal. This is the first time we've had a dedicated plastic kit for the Horus Heresy. I'm pretty sure that's true. As a vehicle, should I add?
Yeah, because I think obviously the Mark IV and the Mark III Marines and the Cataphractic Terminators. Yeah. Contemptor, oh yeah, actually no, Contemptor did get 40k rules straight away after that, because it's in the Space Marine Codex these days.
The Calth Tempter.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, I mean the Calth Tempter was a great box filler for the Betrayal at Calth box set, but it wasn't a great miniature in its own right. it was great as part of that box set. It was a bit of a rip-off for 35 quid as a miniature on its own, I always thought.
Ouch.
But yeah. But this Spartan looks brilliant.
Yeah, it's got a lot of the hallmarks of the Land Raider. Obviously, the shape, the sponsons with las cannons, but it clearly has its own silhouette because, forgive me if I've forgotten what a Land Raider looks like, but the treads running openly all the way around, I don't think they do that on a Land Raider. And even if they do, these treads are raised higher than the actual top of the hull, which is a different shape. You've got 4 las cannons instead of 2. The positioning of the central mounted weapons, what would you call it? Not the sponsons, the opposite. The secondary armament, they call it, is in a different position with a different shape of the turret.
Well, it's basically like a visual throwback to the old Rogue Trader Land Raider, isn't it?
Yeah, and the front of it really looks like...
That's right.
The front of it looks like a Thunderhawk ramp as well. It's not a Land Raider ramp, that's a Thunderhawk ramp. Or at least to my eye, it looks like a Thunderhawk.
Yeah, there's a bit of the front end of a Thunderhawk in there, yeah. Like you just said, Rem, it is a throwback to the Land Raider from the Rogue Trader days. And you see, way back in the day, the first vehicle kits that were released in Rogue Trader was first the Rhino, so the Rhino transport, and then shortly after that came a Land Raider kit. And in the couple of years following that, maybe even a few months, I can't quite remember now, but in World Dwarf, they ran a series of articles where they showed you how to do conversions on the plastic kit and to turn them into other vehicles. So this gave us a Whirlwind, the Vindicator, the Sabre Tank Hunter, and it also gave us a Spartan. And in the Spartan, they took the original plastic Land Raider kit, flipped the tracks on upside down, and then you scratch built a section of a hull and you drop some parts on from a Rhino as well. And yeah, so the Spartan model pays a lot of homage to that original design, shall we say.
So when are we going to get a plastic kit on the deodorant can tank?
Well,
and wasn't that the Custodes transport?
There's no, because
it's actually got a visual reference in
there's a few candidates.
It's got a visual reference in the Visions of Heresy book, artwork of that specific tank made from the deodorant bottle.
Yes,
I haven't seen that artwork.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. And they gave it a name. They called it a Jocasta Land Speeder, if I recall, or Jocasta Gravitac, if I recall correctly. Some people say that the Forge World Javelin Land Speeder is a bit of a nod to the deodorant Gravitac. And yeah, there's custodian vehicles as well. But I don't know. I like to think that someday they may do something that is a direct reference to it. We'll see.
Perhaps. But for those who are not initiated into the Spartan, I had the pleasure of facing one down in 7th edition in a Death Guard army. Someone was playing 7th edition Chaos Death Guard and just said, oh yeah, my Death Shrouder in a Spartan, by the way. It's like, right, okay, good to know. So this thing, for context, has a transport capacity of 26 in the new iteration, which is...
and we should add, according to rules that have been leaked. So we don't know if those are final rules, but those are a leak. Yeah. But yeah, in the leaks, yeah. Yes, please, continue. 26 transport.
No, 26 is confirmed in the article.
They confirmed it in the article? Right.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's 26 confirmed in the article, or 13 Terminators. It comes with 2 quad las cannon arrays with the option for 2 more hull-mounted las cannons. So yes, count them off. That's 10 las cannons on one tank. And it has always been the chunkiest thing that you will ever have to face down against Space Marines that isn't a super heavy. Now that said, when I fought it in 7th edition with my Tau, I played Drop Suit Tau, Farsight Bomb style, and the Spartan did basically nothing because it was a glorified carrying bot, and I just ran rings around it because it was carrying Death Shroud Terminators, and they can't do nothing unless they get to melee range. So I ran rings around it because I was playing Tau, and I just nuked it in the rear end with 1,000,000 fusion guns. That is not going to be feasible in the Heresy game because, 1, you don't get battle suits, and 2, even if you did, you don't get deep striking melter guns up the rear. So good luck taking this thing down.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough cookie, and it is a bit of a... There are a lot of Heresy armor lists that are built around what gets called the Spartan Death Star, and that's very simply a Spartan tank equipped with a flare shield, and then packed up with some normally Legion-specific assault terminators.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the idea is you smash it in, you dump your guys out, and they obliterate whatever's in front of them. But yeah, it is not a panacea, though. It can't defeat anything. I mean, yes, you can put a lot of las cannons on it, but if you're up against a lot of infantry, you can only kill a few infantry each turn with all those las cannons.
Can it carry a Primarch?
Yes.
I couldn't remember what the rules were regarding Primarchs and transports.
Yeah, and that's one of those bit about why it's such a good Death Star delivery device.
Yeah, I can imagine. Though that leads on to the question I think that's been on many a Heresy player's mind, because the invulnerability of the Spartan has always been tempered by the Achilles heel of the fact that Heresy was played under 7th edition rules, and that meant hull points and the vehicle damage table, meaning that it was, theoretically, possible to one-shot kill a Spartan if you got lucky. But obviously, but under, of course, 9th edition, a tank such as this, if it were in 9th edition, would have a toughness of 8 or 9 and approximately 20 wounds, and a 2+ armor save to boot, which would make it obviously a lot tougher, but also more expensive because it doesn't have the Achilles heel that it used to have. And I know I've been speculating of what rules system Heresy 2.0 will use. It's been a running question for a while. Will it be a build on of the 7th edition rules that will then allow Heresy veterans to continue playing the game the same way, but with new changes to update these rules that are 7 years old or 8 years old at this point? Or will it be an update into a parallel system to the modern one, where it plays like 8th or like 9th, just with a smaller faction list, but still adapting those key ideas, the removal of blast templates, the change of vehicles to go onto toughness and armor save, rather than armor values and hull points, and so on and so forth.
So there's a lot of questions there, a lot of points there to address. So, well, the new rules haven't been released, and we haven't seen previews yet from official channels. There was a mention in a recent article, though. So I don't know if you viewers are aware, but Warhammer community, over the course of quite a few months now, have been publishing a set of Horus Heresy scenario packs.
Yeah, we talked about a few of them on the show when it's been talking about cool units and the lore behind them.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Now, in the most recent one of those, which is to do with the latest exemplary battle...
Is it the Raven Guard Emperor's Children one?
It is, yes. Quite an interesting new grudge match there. But within that, there is an interesting little mod there. And it reads as such. It says, now we've announced the upcoming edition of the Horus Heresy game. Players will be pleased to know that all... in italics of the exemplary battle units we've published in this series will have their profiles updated to work with the new rules. Stay tuned for more, but rest assured they will remain usable. In fact, they were all written for the new edition and then reverse engineered to fit the current one. It's almost like we had a plan all along. Now, to me, that sounds like the new game is going to be something very close to, or certainly built upon, 7th edition rules. So the current Heresy rule set, with some adaptations. And so I think that's the direction they're probably going in, or have gone in, because of course it's all built, it's all done now. It's just a question of waiting for them to release it.
Yeah, because reverse engineering a unit to fit current rules when it was written for others is not an easy task. And I can imagine it would be easier to do it working from a similar starting base, but at the same time, I still remember the absolute cluster flip that was the 8th edition launch, where quick, index everything, and a million rulebooks came out at once, where they had to update all those units at once. I can't imagine Games Workshop wants to put themselves through that amount of rule writing again, to update every unit in such a way, but I think I would like it certainly to stay in a 7th-esque system, because, call me crazy, I think that there is a genuine, a bit of a nostalgia for something like 7th. For me, it's for 5th, because it was my first edition. I miss 5th.
Yeah,
but
a lot of people have memories of 5th, yeah.
But 7th, for all its Decurion level flaws, 7th was a really interesting game system that someone who grew up on 4th and 5th, I really enjoyed playing 7th, and I never felt too over or underpowered playing 7th. Obviously, I haven't got enough experience in 9th to know just how bad it is, but I miss a little bit of the actual, like, spending an hour to do a turn. I know that sounds stupid. Maybe it's because I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit, and thus I've got embroiled in complex rulings again. But yeah, I've actually missed a little bit the long, detailed, strategic planning that went into a turn of 7th and all the different bits that go into it, like lining up shots, true line of sight, placement of templates, the use of Snapfire and the advantages that gave. Admittedly, I don't miss the Jinx save, but, needs must. Yeah. It's an interesting bit of... I know it's nostalgia. I know I sound dumb, but I kind of miss 7th. And I'm not saying that 9th is bad. Please don't take that as me saying 9th is bad. It's me just saying there's a market for that older style of play. I mean, they wouldn't be rebooting Warhammer the Old World if there wasn't a market for the old school style of Warhammer that died when Age of Sigmar came in. Doesn't mean AOS is bad, because it isn't. Yeah, but exactly. There's a market for the old stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've got to kind of ask yourself the question, what is Games Workshop's business strategy here?
Yeah.
They've got Warhammer 40,000. They don't need a second Warhammer 40,000 game, I'd suggest. What they need is something different. Different enough, but as to appeal to a different customer base, because there is a different demographic to appeal to. At the same time as obviously still playing to their strengths of the very strong IP of their universe, and obviously their fantastic miniature producing capabilities, and I think that's what the Heresy has got the potential to do, because the way it sort of is at the moment and has been for the duration is Heresy has been very niche because it's taken two concepts. One, which is essentially the idea of games are medium to large size by default.
True.
There are rules to play small games, but Heresy has always been a medium to large size battle game.
Yeah, 1,500 minimum was sort of the bait when the game started to work.
Yeah, I mean, most people would play at least 2,000 points.
Yeah.
And up from there. And then also you've got the fact that it was supported by Forge World on a miniatures front, which means resin miniatures, which means expensive per unit.
And hard.
There's definitely a level of modelling challenge that some people don't, that is beyond. Resin miniatures are a step beyond plastic miniatures, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So those two things combined together, so big battles plus Forge World miniature range, meant that it was only ever going to appeal to a very limited number of people. Purely, well, in terms of, like, when I say appeal, I mean people who will buy it, and that's purely because of the cost of entry. And then if you throw in the fact that the rules are, you've got the black books, which, I don't know, 70, 80 quid a pop. It wasn't, it's expensive. And
that's by Warhammer standards, it was expensive.
Yeah, by Warhammer standards, it was expensive. Now, I'm not saying it's outside of a market, because there is a market for that sort of money. But there's an opportunity by having a large plastic miniature range for the Heresy to get a lot more people involved while still keeping the core tenet of a large battle game. If you can halve the price of an entry army from, say, £500 to £250, it's still £250, and that's going to be beyond some people's budget. But it's going to let a lot more people in than paying £500, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting running Warhammer Club at school. That obviously I've taught the students how to play 9th edition, and I know, because I found out at club this week, that one of my students went home over the holidays and taught one of their family how to play 9th edition. It was that simple. That a kid could do a few weeks of playing 9th, then go home and teach it to somebody else. And that's the upside of the way GW has streamlined their game systems, both Sigmar and 40k. It's done a really good job of making them at an entry level very accessible. You can add layers upon layers of complexity, as me and my colleagues keep finding out every time we forget a ruling and need to double check exactly how something works. For example, we forgot how the command reroll worked this afternoon. Because we couldn't remember, does it just re-roll hit, wound, save, or can you re-roll any dice? We couldn't even remember because we'd forgotten, because these things happen. And Heresy, for someone like me who's been around since 5th, Heresy felt quite intuitive for me to grasp. But if you were starting from 8th and you were then put in front of Heresy, you'd go, hang on, the stat line's not the same. What's initiative? Where's my movement value? What's weapon skill? Why has it not got a dice roll on it? Why have I got 2 tables I need to compare to? Why is the AP completely different? Why is the bolter that's AP 5 not cutting through that Terminator's armor? It was such a different system, and yes, that's a USP. That's a unique selling point that Heresy should absolutely embrace. But you would understand why GW go, okay, let's make it so that those who are 40k players at least have something they can grip onto. So let's maybe change the stat line to have movement values and fixed weapon skill hit rolls instead of having 2 charts, so that at least the stat line looks the same. And maybe change the AP system to match the 40k, while still keeping some of the styles, like armor values and hull points, that make 7th what it was. Maybe it will be some kind of hybrid system, so that people have got an onboarding point, but also can take the game in a completely different direction, and it doesn't feel too different to the Heresy purists and those who've been around for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I don't know.
And that's going to be really interesting to see the exact direction they take it in. Are they going to, or have they produced a revised edition that stays very close to the current rule set, let's call it, and therefore is going to feel very natural or feel very at home to existing Heresy players? Or are they going to go for something, like a complete revamp? So let's say something like going from 7th edition 40k to 8th edition 40k, or are they going to go somewhere in between to say, well, there's some good bits about 7th which we like, but there's some things that we don't like about it?
Yeah.
One of the interesting things thinking about the Heresy as a setting and how the game works as a meta is it's a civil war. It's a great imperial civil war. So that means that most of you got a fairly small number of armies involved in the Heresy. In a sense, that means you've got the Marines, which are probably going to make up 90% of armies, I imagine. Probably like we do at the moment. You've then got the Mechanicum, so the predecessors to the Adeptus Mechanicus of 40k. And then you have the Solar Auxilia, which are sort of like the Imperial Guard on steroids.
Plus knights, demons, and various bits of flavor text.
Yeah, you got those. And you've also got the Adeptus the Legionis Custodes, really part of the towns of the Imperialis. So you got the sisters as well. So you got those as well, but it's still a relatively small number of armies when you
certainly compared to the Xenos Power 40k.
Yeah, and in Heresy, there's never been a huge drive to make the armies that different from each other. I'm not saying there aren't, because there are subtle differences, and that's kind of like the interest in how it plays. It's like, how do you build a subtly different Marine army? But there's a lot more similarity between the units. So therefore, you don't have to deal with the same sort of challenges in balancing the meta that 40k has, where you've got everything from orcs up to, I don't know, the Custodies, and you got the Eldar, which are kind of like off on their own branch, and then you got the Tyranids, which is something completely different as well.
Yeah.
It is a narrow range, so I suppose part of how they design the game can take advantage of that.
Yeah, possibly. I think it will definitely be one to keep an eye on, and I look forward to the Horus Heresy Open event. I've not gone, and I know there was a big furor about how quickly the tickets sold, but I think that will be very interesting. And when people come out of that event, particularly the influencers who have got that sort of, I know that I feel almost dirty using that word, but those who have an online presence and will make videos and post long Twitter threads about it to see how they feel it plays and how similar it is to the Heresy of old versus the 40k of new. It'll be interesting to see what the feedback is coming out of that event. And I think they really need to make sure they get on board people. That's my big concern, is just how are you going to onboard the millions of 40k fans you have who've all heard of the Horus Heresy. Most of them have armies that fought in the Horus Heresy. But how do you get them invested in it on a gameplay level, rather than it being a lovely bit of skybox flavor text on where your army came from?
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting that you mentioned the upcoming Heresy Open Day, which is on May the 7th.
Is it May?
May the 7th. I think it's 2 weeks away.
Oh, that's soon.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I've seen some opinions voiced about people. I mean, I hate the term influencers because I don't think it's a particularly useful way to describe people who are self-employed artists.
Yeah.
But when you actually, I mean, I know some of the people who have been invited as a social media creator to they won't go long for free. They'll have to do some work, I think. There'll be a lot of painters there. And they'll be given a pre-release set to paint up, and take to the event, and that'll be, part of their contract.
Yeah.
And I know a few people who are going in that capacity, and from that, I can see that Games Workshop marketing is picking people who can reach outside of the existing Heresy customer base.
Yeah, it's not like they've picked someone who is a Heresy player through and through. They've picked more generally. Is that what I'm getting from that? I'm not going to ask to name names. I don't think that's fair. But
as far as I'm aware, no one who is active Heresy content creator on social media has been invited to that event. Not who's considered like a specialist in Heresy, let's say, or someone who's focused on it. I mean,
not someone like you, for example.
Well, there's an example. I mean, I was quite flattered and humbled because a lot of people have sent me messages both in public and private asking if I had been invited. So, well, no, I haven't, but yeah, it's very flattering to suggest that I did. But no, I think this is a very deliberate strategy on their part, and I think it makes a lot of sense as well, because they don't need to sell the new Heresy game to Horus Heresy fans. Yeah, they will buy it. Trust me. Most of them, they'll
swallow their pride and buy it anyway.
I think, and also I I'm very wary of listening to loud voices of dissent on this because I think it's a case of perception bias.
Yeah, that too. I think that's more than fair, and it gets into a lot of nitty-gritty, and I think we'll see exactly what happens, but it will be, like I say, I'm just curious to see what the outcome of that event is in terms of what people think of it, and then how those people that you'd consider to be the heart of the heresy community then respond to that feedback and where it goes from there. It'll be interesting. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but it will be interesting to see.
I agree. I think it'll be very interesting. And, perhaps I have been able to obtain a ticket, so, I will be able to give an opinion on the day as well.
Yeah, so subtle nudge to subscribe so that you can get the feedback. Right, I think we've shut Remleiz out of the conversation for far too long.
I'll be honest, I missed most of the conversation because I spent the past 5 minutes with my head in the toilet, so...
Oh, no!
Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that.
So if everyone notices I'm being more quiet than usual, it's probably because my head's in the toilet, so...
Your dedication to your craft is...
So something skulls for the porcelain throne or something.
Lol. Right, well, while you are here, let's give you something cool to talk about. Shall we discuss Necromunda some more?
Yeah, go on then.
So, we got 2 Necromunda miniatures revealed alongside everything else. The land train, the Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler, which is a really nice looking miniature. And I get the feeling a lot of players in a lot of armies are quite interested in acquiring one. I can imagine a lot of Genestealer cult players or even Guard players would be quite happy to have one of those.
I've seen a few people with Orc armies going, "Oh yes, please."
Oh, Battle Fortress. Oh no, Tactica, no, don't. Yeah. So yeah, I like that. We also got a bounty hunter for the Orlocks, sort of the first specialist character for Ash Wastes, which is Vesper Medina, who, I'm going to be honest, is kind of like the Disney princess out of Brave, but Mad Maxified. Swapped out a bow for a massive hand.
So basically, she's Mad Maxine.
Yeah, but it's got. I mean. Wait, her name's Medina, which is kind of like Merida, but swapped the letters around.
It probably is a reference. GW does do that.
Either way,
remember Lothar Hex is a reference to Jonah Hex? Or Obi-Wan Cluso?
Yeah, true. Absolutely. So, this is a... I've nearly said Ridge Runner, but I know that's not it. A quad bike character armed with a belt-fed rocket launcher, which is just very cool. With the trick shot skill, ballistic skill 3+, and obviously a bit more defense to boot because it's a custom quad bike. So very much a cool miniature. And I think some Genestealer cult players, if they could get their hands on this for a Ridge Runner or something like that, would be more than happy to.
I'm thinking Orcs for, cult speed and all that.
Yeah, the challenge with it though is because Orcs are generally a lot bulkier and shorter than humans in terms of how their posture is. You'd have to do a fair bit of conversion work, particularly with the legs.
Not necessarily with
and the
driver.
driver.
You can just do a head swap because he can just basically say it's a fat Orc, who's with biker belly.
Yeah, maybe. And the gunner, obviously, I think it's mainly going to be how wide the legs are, because Orc legs are generally very widespread.
We'll just say he's an Orc.
And
Orc, yeah, there you go.
Grot gunner, but no, there's no way an Orc would ever let a Grot have all the fun. But no, yeah, definitely some cool Orc and Genestealer cult potential in these Necromunda miniatures. And we also had a bit of a look at some rules for the what is it? The Helamites, the dust mounts, the bugs, basically. Yeah, not the mechanical ones, the biological ones.
Yeah. Dustback Helamites. That's a great name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds like something from the computer game Oddworld, if you ask me.
Which Oddworld game are you referring to? Because there's a few Oddworld.
Oh,
okay.
Abe's Odyssey. Helamites, it reminds me of Paramites. And the artistic style of them would not be out of place in that game either. It's not a war game. But
they need to get rid of the eyes to make them fit in Old World, I feel. Because the Paramites and the Scrabs had no eyes, did they?
They didn't, did they? No.
So yes, in terms of how these guys work, they're move 8, they have a jump ability, and they can also do ride-bys, which is essentially a drive-by stabbing, but obviously you're not driving, you're riding. So what they can do is they can go into combat range running past an enemy, stop, attack with their weapon, and then run on a bit more. But they can also be attacked back. So you basically do a mini combat phase in the movement phase. And it does then talk about what happens if they get knocked down. And yes, they have called the rule, I get knocked down. But obviously, we'll see if they get up again.
Because you're never going to keep them down.
Sorry. Well, it depends. A strength 7, AP -2, damage 2 hit, that might keep them down.
I mean, they'll just be pissing the night away at that point, then, won't they?
How many references are we going to make? But yes, we've got some pretty nasty stuff going on, and I quite like the fact they've actually started to spell out how these mounted rules work, because these lances, damage 2, +2 strength, AP -2, and out of engagement range with range 2 as well, and the lance keyword. These guys could be really nasty at doing what the Dark Eldar Reaver jet bikes used to do, because I hated those bloody things. They used to whiz over your heads and use the blade veins to do a gajillion strength 5 hits at a time. And then you had the cluster bombing that did strength 6 hits as well. They just messed up your units so you could do nothing about it because it was the movement phase. I bloody hated Reaver jet bikes at the time. And then they gave them in Jink. So yeah, thanks. Go away, Jink. I know that's an old callback rant from 20 minutes ago, but you know. So yeah, it's an interesting setup, and we'll see exactly how they operate and how good they are compared to, obviously, vehicles. Still, fun concept.
I suppose it's a bit different, isn't it? We've been in Necromunda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a very different style of game. They do look great. They do look great. I like the artistic
what
style.
What they're basically doing is that they're doing Gorka Morka again, but without the orcs. Because the Helamites, like the way they play, it's very evocative of how the Muti gangs from Gorka Morka were played, because the Mutis were unique in that they didn't use any vehicles at all. They were all cavalry-based. Because you had the orcs who had their trucks and tracks and buggies, and that. You had the Grots who had the things like the cutters and the pump wagons and stuff like that. Diggers also had trucks and buggies and tracks, and Mutis just had cavalry.
Oh yes, that's an interesting observation. That so yeah, with the introduction of the hauler and these guys, yeah, the Cargo 8, and then these guys, yeah, are they playing on that old idea? So.
It's certainly a lot of people have gone that way with it. I hope that
they introduced there was one. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before, but in Gorka Morka, there was one scenario that had a special rule called the rolling road. So basically, like, every turn, you'd move like all the scenery on the board like down a few inches, you know, and then recycle it.
Yes,
to basically represent the entire thing going like a high-speed chase kind of thing. And
oh yeah, and you could yeah, there were like rules for falling vehicles, weren't there?
So I hope they incorporate something like that for Ash Waste as well.
That'd be amazing.
Especially for, like, you know, like a train robbery type scenario.
Like Mad Max in the 41st Millennium.
That's what literally Gorka Morka was, though, wasn't it? Just walks.
True, yeah.
Mad Mork.
Well, yeah, it's interesting how they're getting into more of the world of Necromunda rather than just being about the hive gangs.
Agreed.
They did touch upon it in the last edition of Necromunda with the introduction of the original Ash Nomads. But this seems to be more of a expansion and refinement of the concept, because this edition of Necromunda, they've expanded so much in the lore. I mean, like, we're getting like dedicated, effectively, gang codices essentially.
The house.
Whereas,
books.
like, previous editions, each house had like a page description and some rules, and that was basically it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you would get a book which covered like a whole group of gangs, wouldn't you? Makes you wonder what else have got planned for Necromunda. So still...
Can I throw the word scaly into the mix?
Yeah.
Well, exactly, yeah. My favourite gang, Scavies. I really used to enjoy playing Scavies in the previous version of Necromunda.
Also, can we have a Psyker, please? A Psyker gang? Like a sort of like Psyker outcast.
You can.
Who've had to been chucked out of the gangs for Psyker potential.
Weird gangs?
Yeah, weird gangs.
They already exist, or am I just being stupid? Oh, oops, sorry. I forget how many things are in Necromunda, because you think it's like, oh, it's just the houses, but it's not, because you've got the Corpse Grinders, you've got the Palanite Enforcers, you've got the Chaos stuff, you've got all these different things.
And one thing...
And still
I was just saying, like, one thing I absolutely love in Necromunda is when they expanded the lore for the other noble houses, and not the clan houses, but the actual noble houses, like House Tai, who are like... an astropathic house who claims to trace their lineage back all the way to, like, you know, ancient China and Japan. And their version of the Imperial Aquila is actually a two-headed dragon rather than an eagle.
That's interesting.
It's a bit of a skim read.
And they've also got, like, cyborg geishas as well, which are awesome.
That's unusually close to the present day, isn't it? Because with things in 40k, they're not normally so traceable back to the present day. I'm not saying they aren't, because 40k is full of tropes like that. But to actually say there is a link back to an ancient civilization on Earth.
Yeah, point taken.
You know, like... They've had things like all the different Imperial Guard regiments, which were clearly plays on like modern societies, but they never said the Valhallans were from Siberia, did they?
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's fascinating, yeah. I wonder, I like you say, I really hope they do the Scavies again at some point. So I'd love to see a Scaly 2.0.
They might actually rename them, though, because... in the newest Cal Jericho novel, they were just referred to as brutes. Yeah, so they might just rename Scaly to brute.
Will people just call them scalers anyway? I don't know. We'll see.
And well, that's a perfect segue, because speaking of things that have a new name, but everyone's going to call them the old name anyway,
Squats.
There was a big squat lore dump today.
Oh.
So, you know how they're called the Leagues of Votann, and no one knew what Votann was? Well, now we know what Votann is.
Or Votann's
people thought that people thought maybe Votann was like the region of space, or what they called themselves, or maybe an ancestor or something like that. And we finally got an answer. So, the Votann are what's called ancestor cores. Supercogitators, gestalt repositories of inherited knowledge and wisdom. Self-organizing data stacks, quantum info cores held within all the information a peoples might need to survive, weapon specs, military theory, gene data, science, philosophy, STCs, all sorts of things.
Oh, so wait a second. So they are saying that an ancestor core can incorporate an STC.
More like contains piles of them.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting, because the STC has been, it's like a mythical do-it-all technology, isn't it? But here it's saying that these ancestor cores are something above it. I mean, obviously,
it suggests that rather than like building STCs, it's more a case of an idea that obviously the STCs were built by the bajillion by the early humans as a way to expand through the stars. They just lost most of them in the age of technology, in the Dark Age technology, in the Age of Strife. They just lost a lot of them. So it's most likely that a lot of what was lost was secured in the Votann, which is why the kin, because apparently squats being a slur means I'm not going to try and use that term too much, which is why the kin stockpile and use such unique technology, having weapons and armor that the Imperium don't have access to, because they have STCs that the Imperium just don't have.
There's also the fact in regards to how the Squats or the Kin, or whichever name you want to give them, they don't view technology with the same superstitious reverence that the rest of humanity does. They just see technology as technology, so they're not going to be against things such as, invention and innovation. They're not going to be rigidly dogmatic in what you can and cannot make it in a factory kind of thing.
This is true, but that's not to say that they're above worshipping technology. Because if you read it directly, each league has its own Votann, and no kin would hesitate to lay down their life to protect it. These cogitators are as sacred to the kin as gods are to the more spiritual races. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say this is their version of the machine god, but they clearly hold these things in incredibly high reverence in a way that probably, if the Mechanicus were to look upon it, they would say they have supplanted the Omnissiah with the Votann, if the Mechanicus were to find out what they were.
Well, and would the Mechanicus look at a Votann and say it is a silica animus?
Well, that comes into the final point. Some Votann have developed idiosyncrasies, what might even be termed personalities.
We're getting very close to tech heresy at this point, aren't we?
Well, it's good for not part of the Imperium.
And what's in... Exactly, but if the Imperium were to find out about it, they look at a Tau drone and go, "Techno heresy, artificial intelligence, destroy it." What are they going to think of this bloody thing?
Interesting thought.
And
it's also... But then again, the way it's described, though, is sort of... they've kept the ambiguity in the same way that the machine spirit of a Titan is described. Yeah?
Yeah, it's pseudo-sentient.
Or kind of like a mini infinity circuit in a way kind of thing.
Yeah. It has a sense of self, but it's not alive type thing.
I mean, it doesn't... I mean, obviously, they, from what we've seen in this article, that, they seem to be relative, benign to the kin or the squats themselves, and not inimitably hostile to life as the abominable intelligences of the silica animus of the Men of Iron war were.
True.
Which doesn't mean they're not, but maybe just they didn't go nuts or they didn't view humans as something they had to destroy.
No, this is true. But what's interesting is, I think, this is going to sound a little bit stupid, they kind of treat the Votann like a ginormous magic 8-ball.
Go on then. Because
it says that essentially the kin would be able to develop and ask it a question and get an answer. In terms of, it had computational power as a cogitator. It could, with all this information stored within it, it could compute ideas and give a response. It's not like a machine spirit that powers something. It's not a power source or a personality. It can think. It is essentially a supercomputer that thinks. Not maybe like an AI, but maybe like a VI, if you link like Mass Effect. It can think and has huge amounts of information that it can give out to you. But, so again, giant magic 8-ball.
Or perhaps they're just artificial intelligences that didn't develop, where it didn't turn into some hostile to their creators. Which is the sort of paradigm of the Imperium, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, AI going hostile is not a guarantee. I mean, look at the Tau, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, perhaps, and they're kind of, I mean, there's not been much about the AIs in 40k itself, but just thinking about, it was Blackstone Fortress, wasn't it, that had the
Man of Iron.
UR 025, which was... it was a Adeptus Mechanicus Explorer bot, but it was actually a Man of Iron. So a true artificial intelligence left over from the But, that had kind of managed to exist in a way that it wasn't killing every single human it saw on sight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is, obviously, we know, and Rem and I can certainly understand about what happens to a computer when it starts to get old and get a bit clogged up. It slows down. And so it sort of, because one of the things that's interesting about introducing this race of super technologically advanced humans who have supercomputers at their core is, well, this is a bit, not going to sit well with the grimdark, slow stagnation, entropy of destruction that is the galaxy, exactly the Imperium. And what's interesting is that they sort of covered that in that the fact that because the Votann have been running for millennia and having to compile all this data, they're getting full. Essentially, their memory banks are nearly full. And so their computational power has gone from that to ask me and I'll get back to you in 10 years with an answer to the same question.
Sounds like a little bit Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, doesn't it? These all 40Ks trope on deep thought, Yeah,
I'm sure one of them is still computing 42.
Or, what is the question to the ultimate answer type thing, which is an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I on that, I've said this a few times about various things in 40K, but it would be nice to see them introduce a non-horrible grimdark faction into the game.
They did. It was called the Tau, and everybody hated them.
Yeah, I know.
So they made them more grimdark afterwards.
They did, and that was a major mistake on GW's part. I think they should have stuck to their guns on the Tau's background, because I think the reason they created them as they originally did was to be an anti-faction for the setting. So, if someone didn't want to have, be playing the, terrible Imperium, the perfidious Eldar, the mindless, ravenous Tyranids, the corrupt chaos.
If you want to be the good guys and you want to be the last spark of hope for the galaxy, play these guys.
Yeah. But, and the 40K universe is a huge place. So surely there is some room for a faction like that. Maybe they're going to do that with the Votann.
Yeah, I think certainly people would have seen that, but having this information about the fact that the cores are slowing down and they are stagnating means that they can't evolve in the same way, because the Tau, when they were introduced in 3rd edition, were constantly innovating, constantly expanding, constantly integrating, and being very much the anti-Imperium. As you said, an anti-faction is a good way of putting it, actually. And as they've gradually changed, the Tau have got stuck in the meat grinder, and the Ethereals have got more twisted. And yes, still the Ethereals. I stand by that as a Farsight loyalist. But the kin and the Leagues of Votann, they haven't tried to do that. They have said these are still humans. They still have the entropy problem that the Imperium's got, but in a different way. It's not that they've forced it upon themselves with this backwards dogmatic approach and spirituality. They've just run out of tech power because they've run out of memory. And they're also falling into the trap the Imperium did with worshipping technology, the Omnissiah, and the trappings of dogma, because they're falling into it with the ancestor cause and laying down their life for it. The same trap the Tau have fallen into with the Ethereals. It shows that never-ending perpetuity of no matter how hard you try to be the good guy, the galaxy and the state of the galaxy is going to get you in the end. And it fits the grimdark. I understand, yes, okay, don't make the Tau just be another flavour of the month. These are grimdark in an edgy way kind of thing. But it does show the effect that the galaxy has on its inhabitants. It is constant war, constant suffering, constant ever-living nightmare, especially in the days of the Noctis Aeterna and the Cicatrix Maledictum. There is a sense of no matter what you do, you are just trying to keep the flame alive. No matter how much it gutters and spits, you just need to keep the spark alive at any cost. And the Imperium's been doing that for 10,000 years. The kin are having that problem as well as their technology stagnates. The Tau, for all their desire to innovate, are falling into the trappings of dogma and worship, with the Ethereals being stuck in this meat grinder that dragged humanity and the Eldari down. Yes, they haven't gone through their own psychic purge, but it's quite a nice, subtle storytelling mechanism if you know how they used to be. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you.
Well, I suppose in that respect, then, is it? Would they be an interesting faction to explore the idea of a civilization that is on the cusp, let's say, of the descent into grim darkness, or a path out to something better?
I think that's the story they're telling with the Tau. I think that is you've got somebody like you've got the Ethereals and Shadow Sun, who's caught in the middle, and you've got Farsight, who got out of the loop. Now, I'm not going to sit. I know I could go on a hero worship rant of Farsight for 10 minutes, and I'm not going to. But people have been calling for a Farsight heresy type thing, not obviously the same way, but a full-on Farsight civil war within the Tau, where you could pitch it as, this is our last chance. This is our way to break the cycle that the Ethereals are falling into, of exactly what happened to the Galar, exactly what happened to the Eldar, exactly what happened to all these races that we've encountered.
But no. You see, the thing is, none of those things you described there share the same fate. Every path, every race in 40k has got a different fate or a different peril it's for. So the Orcs are leftover bioweapons of an ancient war. The Eldar are also leftover bioweapons from an ancient war, who had every potential to transcend that legacy, but fell to their own hubris and are now like a dying race. I mean, chaos is like an extreme aspect of humanity's fall. The Imperium is the rotten carcass of a interstellar civilization that could once been great. Although I suppose in 8th and 9th edition, it's kind of like turned it into a perhaps a corpse with a bit of a pulse now.
Rage against the dying of the light is kind of the phrase that comes to mind with the modern Imperium.
Yeah, there is. Perhaps there is a bit of that. There is definitely that. But I mean, the Tyranids are like, they are the ultimate inimitable anti-life force, in effect. Well, no, actually, that's probably better described as the Necrons. But
the Necrons are kind of like the Eldari in that they rather than being created as bioweapons and fall into their own hubris, their hubris doomed them to become living weapons.
Yeah, the Necrons have another variation on sort of, they fell for their own design. Yeah.
And you could argue the same for humanity, because the Emperor, as much as he will have envisioned many things, his own hubris of, I can sort this and I will fix this. He alienated those around him in the Primarch project and the Perpetuals he worked with. He alienated his own sons and caused half of them to turn on him. He alienated so many in his own hubris of, no, I can fix everything. Just let me fix everything and shut up and let me do it. And his own hubris killed. You could argue, I'm not saying I'm dead right here, but you could argue that it's all come down to, we can fix this, we are right, and that hubris has cost him. And it's the same with the Tau.
Well, wait. Let's
I'll let you finish.
Let's just address the Empire thing. See, I think the story of the Empire, and it's where it didn't go wrong. The Emperor was a being who, over millennia, so the Emperor is a perpetual, amongst other things, saw he saw a way out for the struggle against chaos that all civilized sentient creatures face. And he saw a way out of that, and he hatched a plan to do it, but it was a desperately slim chance that he had. The plan would work, but everything had to go right,
and then Magnus fucked it up.
Well, I mean, Magnus messed it up, Lorgar messed it up, and then there's a time loop with Lorgar and the word bearers and the scattering. And the fact that
There's
the
not
Emperor
even the word bearers and the scattering anymore. It's the
stole...
fact that it was changed to Urda now, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, thanks, Siege of Terror.
What have they retconned the first heretic?
Basically, according to Siege of Terror novels, the scattering was caused by Urda, the mother of the Primarchs.
Who the Emperor was working very closely with and pissed off because he was being a hubristic idiot.
That's interesting, that, because the first heretic gives us a very... The novel, The First Heretic, it gives us a very literal description of a scattering.
But the thing is, you can always argue with the First Heretic because that, Argol Tower was being shown all this, by... effectively, by a demon. You could say, well, Ingethel, who was a demon prince at that point, wasn't she?
Yes.
I think that's the general view, that Ingethel is a demon.
So you could argue
prince,
lies of demons, manipulation kind of thing.
Show them what they want to see to get them on side.
You could argue that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, you could argue, who was Ingethel? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and that was never explored in the First Heretic.
Yeah, I'd be interested to get your sort of take on what we've been talking about for the past few minutes, Ron. I appreciate we might not have heard all of it in terms of sort of what the different races represent and whether because we've been talking about the Tau and the Kin in terms of how the Tau represented a different path for the galaxy, but have fallen into, or in my mind at least, the same hubristic trap of we can fix everything, just let us do it. And their leaders have become twisted, and they've been caught in the meat grinder, exactly like the Eldari did, exactly like the humans did, exactly like the Necrons did, and they're all falling into the same trap. I don't know. I'm just curious to see sort of what your sort of view on the matter was.
I think we can all agree that in all of this, the only ones having any fun are the Orcs. The Orcs just go around doing their own thing. It's like, it's a big fight. Who cares? Let's have some fun, lads. Niz are just going around eating everything in sight, so...
Is that fun? Well, nobody knows.
Can the hive mind have fun?
Well, it can feel anger, considering that, it realised the Blood Angels were stopping it so many times, so they're like, alright, fine, I'm going to go invade Balden just to piss you off, kind of thing. Because that's what led to the devastation of Baal, wasn't it? So,
yeah, true.
And considering the fact that Mephistons implied that the hive mind is becoming a god in its own right, I don't know, would you call it the chaos god of hunger or something? I don't know.
Something like that. That's
an interesting thought, yeah. The Tyranids is the chaos god, yeah.
It is the shadow in the warp, after all, so...
And
we do know it's not just thoughts and emotions, but actions that create echoes in the warp as well. Remember Draknien, the result of the first murder. Yeah. So,
yes.
Yeah. All these. So considering the amount of warp energy in the galaxy, Nid's eating everything, and it's like eat, consume, consume, consume. It's bound to create some sort of reflection in the warp, isn't it? Especially with the amount of fear and suffering it causes.
Yeah, for certain, those negative reflections do reflect very strongly in the warp.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, to think about.
You can just imagine what...
Absolutely.
I suppose part of the general theme of the setting of 40k is the idea that the universe is going to be a hostile place. And I guess that seeps through into all the factions and races that get depicted.
Because to oversimplify a description for each race, Eldari would be like hubris, Necrons, hubris, Tau, naivete, Orcs, football hooligans,
Millwall.
Millwall, treatment at Millwall,
Imperium, sheer refusal to die at this point, even though it is bleeding and limping it towards the finish line. So I'm not dead yet. It's like, why won't you die?
Yeah, but that was the point that Leaky was making a minute ago, was about the Emperor in terms of, I've always viewed the Emperor as a hubristic, overconfident, just let me fix it and get out of my way kind of character, whereas Leaky sort of presented it as this is a desperate chance. I need 1,000,000 sixes to come up. If one comes up, I'm done. So he had to go for it. I don't know sort of where you'd stand on it.
You could argue for both, because it's a desperate thing. We need 1,000,000 sixes, but I'm the only one who can do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because he did piss off the other Perpetuals, which is why the Primarchs got scattered, which is why they developed the way they did, which is why half of them turned on him.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're quite right that even in the sympathetic take on the Emperor, that he had like this idea for this plan for humanity that would allow it to evolve into a psychic race without falling prey to chaos. That was his plan. But that plan in and of itself is incredibly hubristic, because to get there, billions are going to have to die.
It's not even just hubristic, it's also arrogant, in a sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose the two go hand in hand.
True, yeah. But that's what...
I mean, they say
that's the one word I keep seeing in regards to people's interpretation of the Emperor as the Horus Heresy series, ticked on. It was like just sheer arrogance in part of the Emperor in some respects.
Yeah, and it never came across like it was an act. Like, even when you get inside the Emperor's head in, like, Master of Mankind, you still look at the idea that the Emperor is putting on this front to show confidence in that, yes, we are going to win, and I believe that, when in fact he's really having to think really hard. You don't see that in his character arc in Master of Mankind and things like that. He still is arrogant even when you get in his head. It's not like Lorgar, where you get in his head and see him differently. You can argue the fact,
because, when things are utterly lost, but he still thinks he can pull it back, even though it's like, completely unfeasible. It's like, you just let it go. It's like, no, I can do this. I can fix it. It's like, you can't, just let it go, kind of thing.
Like thinking he could turn Magnus back.
I mean, that's an interesting one, actually, about the Emperor's thinking that he'd lost. You could have argued that he knew that quite early on in the heresy, couldn't you?
Pretty much as soon as he lost Magnus, I think he knew he was done.
Yeah.
Because Magnus was the wild card, and he needed Magnus to run the Golden Throne. Without Magnus, I think he knew he'd lost, which is why he tried so hard to get him back.
Yeah.
To the point of... Yeah,
but that's really interesting to then ask the question, well, why did the Emperor continue to fight so hard? Because given his emperorness, he could have just disappeared off if he wished. Been a super being somewhere else.
Refusal to die comes into the Imperium's main defining trait now.
Yeah.
Just refuse to lose.
I mean, do you
reckon he thought he could... I wonder if he thought he could still defeat or turn Horus back right up until that moment.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
And then Horus beat the perpetuality.
Was he really clinging to that last desperate hope of success?
I think there is the old idea of the Emperor knew the heresy was going to happen, planned it, expected to win it, and just go on from there and sort of cleanse out the Primarchs that way. But... clearly, that didn't go quite as intended. Again, that 1,000,000 sixes argument.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's quite a few hints in the background, like particularly in novels, that the Emperor, there were certain legions that the Emperor wasn't going to need.
Yeah,
once the Imperium was established, there's no real place for the Night Lords.
There was a place for the Night Lords. Any super dominating galactic empire needs a secret police force of terror troops.
Well, maybe so, yeah. But probably not much point for, say, the World Eaters or the Iron Warriors. Maybe the Iron Warriors a bit, but do you know what I mean?
No, I do. I agree with you. I'm being a bit of a facetious arsehole.
You'd be all right, yeah. But certainly... there was a glorious future in there for the Imperial Fists of Blood Angels, the Ultramarines, and the like. But
yeah, who needs a War Master when you've won all the wars?
Indeed, yeah. We need a Peace Master now.
Indeed. Yeah, I love running thought experiments about sort of the state of the galaxy, and maybe it wasn't intended, the whole thing I came up with earlier about the Tau, in terms of like, oh, they're just like being morphed by the galaxy, and it's showing the gradual descent that all races go through in real time. I don't know if that's something that GW have planned or a response to. They're too noble, and they're too not grimdarkify them. I don't know if it was planned or not. But I like the idea that the galaxy gets you in the end because it's just so horrible.
Well, yeah, that'll be like the twist, won't it? The ultimate twist. Yeah, the galaxy always gets it, and that's even true of a certain like races that were or societies that were created in stories. Weren't they?
Yeah,
thinking of like. This is just from a heresy novel, but there are other ones. I mean, like the Interrex, the Diasporax. What was the audio drama? The Adeptus Sororitas, where they go to the planet and it's populated by clones. Black and Red. I don't know if you've heard that.
I haven't. No, that's the first time I've come across that one.
That's a really interesting listen. It's very well produced, but the story is also. It is a really interesting story, but there's definitely a strong element of anything the Imperium touches goes to crap.
Yep, that sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
And if you do feel like the Imperium is getting a bit too far and you want to tear it down, just going to mention this quickly. Chaos Space Marines have 2 wounds and 3 attacks now.
Huzzah!
Yeah, they've properly amped up Chaos Marines, so fun.
I cannot get my head around why it took them so long to sort that out.
No, I know it is stupid, but
do you reckon they're playing mind games with the player base? But that's the only logical explanation I can think of for doing it that way.
Maybe, but they have said that a lot of the kill team stuff is going to be ported over. So, for example, you can have every squad have a Psyker in them. So you can just play Thousand Suns without playing Thousand Suns, which is quite nice. And things like the Chain Axe, the Demon Blade are going to be available as well. So obviously the kill team stuff being ported over for the Chaos Marine kit is good. It'll be interesting to see what the combat patrol for them is. I'm really curious to see what they decide to make the combat patrol for them.
Knowing Jido's past track record, it'll be like 5 Chaos Space Marines and 20 Zangor.
Ouch! You're probably not wrong.
Or 20 Cultists, rather.
Yeah, maybe.
It's literally just going to be the Dark Vengeance stuff, isn't it? They're 5 Chosen, 20 Cultists. There you go.
But at least they've upgraded the Hellbrute and the Chosen.
Yeah,
now,
you won't even get the Hellbrute in the box set.
No, they'll swap it for like.
In fairness, I actually really like the Dark Vengeance Hellbrute. I think it's a really good model.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice model. It's a bit creepy, but then it's supposed to be for a variation on the Chaos Dreadnought.
I actually prefer to the standard Hellbrute kit just because it's has a lot more of an energetic pose. Like, it looks like it's just going for a middle of a rampage.
I need to look at a picture of one of these Hellbrutes now.
The Dark Vengeance Hellbrute. I think his name's something like Metallicus or something.
Yeah, it was Cranon's brother. Yeah. I remember that.
Oh, yeah. It's quite creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting if you put it side by side with the Korgorath, because they've got very much the same pose as the AOS Korgorath that came out a year or so later. But I'd say nothing. The last bit of news, I'm conscious that we've been going for nearly an hour and a half and we haven't actually technically finished the news because we've got so many good side rambles going, and I love side rambles, by the way, let's be clear. I just want to bring it up. We've got our first AOS Skaven. Like, the first models for Skaven that have been AOS exclusive, because they've revealed another Underworlds edition / update with Nether Maze, where they've introduced 2 new warbands. The Khainite Shadowstalkers from Warcry get a warband here called the Shadeborn, and Clan Eshin gets a team of assassins who look absolutely badass, and I really, really like both the Skaven and the Shadeborn. that they have done. And I know a lot of people are very happy because if this is what they're doing for the Ratty Boys, then there's going to be some very happy customers of Clan Eshin in the future.
And, speaking of Underworlds, there is a range rotation happening, so they're going to get rid of like a crap ton of Warhammer Underworld stuff, including the Steelheart Champions, Chosen Axes, Dread Pageant, Thorns of the Briar Queen, Grashrax Despoilers, Mogrox Crushers, Morgor's Fiends, the Wormspat, and Zarbag's Gits.
The Dread Pageant is from Diachasm, so that's the most recent of them. And I think the Wormspat are too. So there's a couple of quite recent ones in there. So some of them, like Steelheart's Champions, have been around for ages, but things like Zarbag's Gits come from when it was still in Shadespire before they left for Beastgrave, but some of them are from Beastgrave and even the Diachasm era, like the Dread Pageant. So if you are looking for them, hurry up.
They're doing quite a lot of range rotating at the moment.
They are. I get, but also is a bit annoying if you're just trying to explore these games for the first time.
Yeah, it's always sad to see good miniatures go out of production, isn't it?
Yeah. Hopefully they'll be back.
Also, one last final bit of news. Black Library coming soon. Page has been updated again for stuff in June. Not too many things coming out, but in June you'll be able to get the standard issue release of the Araman Eternal novel, and also the limited edition for Mortari and the Pale King.
Oh, fun.
And I have to say, it's a very, very pretty looking one, I have to say. If I can get the bloody image.
Yeah, I believe the Huron Blackheart limited edition, the sort of black and white cover print, like they did for the Gazkal novel, that's
next
out
week
very
at the time
soon
of
as well.
recording, yeah.
Next week at the time of recording. Oh, that does look pretty.
Have you? Has anyone heard anything yet about when the next Siege of Terror novel is going to drop?
No.
No, I don't think we've heard past Warhawk.
We know the name and we've seen the cover up, but that's about it so far.
Is this the next one by Aaron
Yes.
Dembski Bowden?
Yes, the Sanguinius Eternity Gate bit.
Going to be exciting, that one, I think.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how they square some of the circles around just how powerful Cabana and Sanguinius are going to be, and exactly how that fight goes.
Or if they decide to retcon it again.
Yeah.
Because wasn't it originally Doombreed that fought him?
Perhaps. Before my
that.
time, that one.
So I know Doombreed.
That's one for your
I
cogitator.
know both
yeah.
Doombreed and Nikari were involved in the siege at some point in older lore.
Well, Doombreed being the first Demon Prince,
Well,
it
the first
makes
Demon
sense.
Prince of Corn, yeah. Oh, by the way, did you see that Doombreed actually turned up in AOS?
I think I saw it, but I've forgotten where.
It was like in a bit of lore fighting against that new Stormcast hero, the one with the angel wings, that Huntress. Yeah.
In Drasta.
So it's like, we actually have a confirmed Demon Prince from Terra in 40k's past showing up in AOS.
I mean, Nikari's obviously in both as
but
well.
Nikari got retconned from being a Demon Prince to just being a regular Keeper of Secrets.
Good point.
But
Okay, so yes,
an official crossover of a 40k Terran Demon Prince showing up in AOS.
Very nice.
Oh, speaking of 40k, and
I like time traveling stuff. It works great.
This isn't just time traveling. This is universe hopping.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it works so well. 40k AOS universe, doesn't it?
oh,
Though I know there was another piece of history that came up recently that I know Rem is very happy about.
Andy Hoare, who works for Games Workshop currently in Forge World, I believe. He's also done some stuff for Black Library and done some game developing stuff for mainline 40k. Yeah, he just casually dropped on Instagram, like just casually confirming that the Red Scorpions are indeed Emperor's children's successors. Just casually.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very him, because you see, Andy Hall, right? He painted some of the miniatures for the original Adeptus Titanicus and Space Marine games, and he was the one who came up with the gunmetal with purple flashes Emperor's Children paint scheme. So the Emperor's Children have always been his like pet project, I think. It's really interesting for him to say that, and he's been involved in Forge World for ages, so that makes a bit more sense as to why Red Scorpions were like Forge World's pet chapter, so to speak.
But the fact that someone working for Forge World, still working from today, just casually dropping it. Oh yeah, by the way, the Red Scorpions are Emperor's Children's successors.
Yeah, for the sake of the viewers who maybe aren't aware of why this is such an interesting and why you were so happy about this, where has this connection come from?
I just want to say I fucking called it, firstly.
Yeah. Oh, why did you call it? Like, can you explain for the benefit of those who don't know all of it, why call it that way?
Basically, the Red Scorpions are known for having an unusually pure gene seed, like purer than pretty much any other modern-day Space Marine chapter, even to the point that like they're obsessed with their own genetic purity. And the gene the one Space Marine Legion gene seed that is the purest above all others was that of the Emperor's Children. Now, some people sort of try to say, oh, but the Blight, it's like the Blight was an artificial flaw that was introduced early on after the Legion was created, because the Selenar gene cults, basically, it was a last-ditch attempt to rebel before they were fully subjugated. And then when they were reunited with Fulgrim, you know, newer Emperor's Children did not suffer from the Blight. Only the original ones who survived up until that point did.
Yes, Fabius Bile, for example.
So it's like, you know, obscenely pure gene seed, link it to the Legion that has the purest gene seed of all. Hey, there's your link. Hooray!
And a particular intolerance for Xenos as well, even by Space Marine standards, because there's some
humans.
Well, I was going to say there's some quite right quotes from the Rogue Trader Age attributed to Carol Culm.
Were they ever particularly renowned for swordplay or things like that? Is that something the Red Scorpions do? Because that was obviously the Emperor's Children's secondary trait. Their genetic stuff obviously is one side of it, but on a battlefield level, they were always renowned for like perfect, clean strikes and were renowned for swordplay. I don't know if that's something the Red Scorpions particularly.
Off the top of my head, I can't actually remember, but I know they're like, you know, meant to be like obscenely highly trained warriors and all that. Funny enough, they're also the ones who came up with the Land Raider Helios.
Yeah, Helios, Sun Cult. Yeah, there's a lot of that in the Emperor's Children too.
Like, because they were fighting heretics on Helios. The Imperial Guard offered to aid them, and Red Scorpions told them to fuck off because you're too dirty, go away. So basically, their chapter master just told their Tech Marines, "Hey, can you stick your whirlwind launchers on top of the Land Raider? Thanks."
Jobs are good.
Pretty much.
That's really interesting. That's almost like that's a revelation, almost like someone going on social media and saying, by the way, the Blood Ravens are Thousand Sons successors.
If you say them for a Glory Gordon, he'll shoot you.
The three big ones it's the Blood Ravens, the Red Scorpions, and the Minotaurs, and the Carcharodons are the four that everyone speculates about.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's almost like, you know how we had the clocks of miniatures of like Plastic Sisters, Plastic Squats, Plastic Thunderhawk. That's something like the four clocks of Space Marine heritage are the Red Scorpions, the Minotaurs, the Blood Ravens, and the Carcharodon Astra. So having one of them crossed off, or even potentially crossed off,
there was a post like on Facebook a few years ago from someone claiming to be a rules tester for Forge World. Who said, "Oh yeah, by the way, it's confirmed that the Minotaurs are indeed descended from the Iron Warriors." But considering it's an ex-tester and just a tester rather than like say like a lore writer or something like that, I'd take that with a pinch of salt because it's like if you're not with the company, you can pretty much say anything you want. It's not really going to hold as much weight, I feel. But like, having something that's coming from someone who's still employed with the company and someone who of such a high position in the company in terms of developing the background stuff like that, I think that holds a lot more weight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those like my uncle works at GameStop kind of things.
My uncle works at Nintendo and he says there's a Me free.
That's it. That's the one.
Me 3. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if Andy Hall says it, then it's. I think that could be viewed as a reliable resource, can't it?
Yeah, it's credible. It might not be correct. It might be his headcanon, but it's
how
credible.
long until Games Workshop decides to exercise as the Red Scorpions or just makes him another generic Imperial Fist successor chapter? No, I'm still salty about that.
I know you're still salty about that.
They took a chapter that was really interesting and had a nice, mysterious background, like, a chapter founded in secret by the Ordo Melius and the Adeptus Ministorum, to just random chapter that, oh, by the way, you're in random Imperial Fist Successor chapter, and you got your name because your chapter master at the time managed to fight off a demonic possession, and that was it.
Yeah, so much for that Grey Knight
I'm just thinking, so why the fuck were you called the Exorcist in the first place then? If you didn't do anything that before.
It feels a massive anticlimax, doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
And considering the fact... The funny thing is, the main story that confirms the Exorcism being a Grey Knight Sister chapter, that was reprinted in an anthology as recently as the launch of 9th edition. And it's so it's still available. That issue of White Dwarf's not available anymore. But that story saying Grey Knight Successor is available on Black Library, along with that story in the Successor Anthology that says they're an Imperial Fist Successor. So which one is it, for fuck's sake? Pick one!
Yeah, though admittedly, there is something to be said, and we've talked about this before, or I have certainly, about the idea of when you let the cat out of the bag, suddenly when the mystery's gone, the interest goes with it. And so
there's a fine line there, isn't there, between the reveals and keeping the mystery.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes retcons are unnecessary and sometimes they can be really good, but at the same time you get some retcons that are just, let's be honest, just absolutely fucking pointless and stupid.
Yeah. I think if you're going to resolve like a really long-standing big question about like an origin story, say, you've got to do it in a really good way, because otherwise it'll just let everyone down if it's like a half attempt, won't it? It's got to be like something really, really deep and meaningful.
Yeah.
Or interesting, at least.
And there are some things that they really can't actually do any reveals for anymore, because they're so deeply ingrained in the mystery that nothing they do will ever live up to the hype. I'm talking specifically about the Lost Primarchs in this regard. They'll never reveal anything, concrete about them. I think
no, because that's the ultimate.
Like the most concrete information we've ever had about them is probably in that Wolftime novel, where it says like, "Oh yeah, the fate of 11th Legion has something to do with the Space Wolves and the Custodians," and that was it.
Yeah, and like a little bit of a personality trait of one of them in the Fulgrim novel.
His brother was humorless. Yeah. Maybe that's why he didn't speak that much. It's like, fine.
Yeah, but, they should remain a mystery.
Yeah, I think the most we'll ever get about 2 and 11 is their names.
I don't even think we'll get that, to be honest.
I don't think we will, but I think that's the most information I think you can give them. Because if you tell their fate, that's it. Story's over. But their name, at least, it allows you to spark something, and it means that those who've been writing some headcanon at least can begin to speculate, well, why do they have that name? Because obviously all of them have a name that kind of is there for a reason. The sons of Horus, obvious. The Emperor's children, well, they were very obviously close to the Emperor. They were perhaps his favourite. The Imperial Fist, sort of a really heavy smash force. The Blood Angels, okay, there's something interesting in their aesthetic there. It's not true for all of them, but you get the idea. So you might be able to unpick and speculate further from a name. A fate is too much.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. I don't know how we've managed to get to an hour and 40. We've literally just covered all the stories of the week. Oh, bloody hell. But...
but I think
No, I know. I'm not complaining.
We
It's
covered
just
them, but we kind of. I think we covered like in a whole load of ways. We've talked around these, haven't we?
oh, absolutely. I'm not complaining. I love when the episodes go on random ramblings. I really do. Probably just means it's a good chance to segue into some questions if we've got a few of them going.
Yeah, not too many questions this week. Some of them are repeats from episodes we didn't get a chance to ask some of them, so I'll try and
Of
get
course.
some of them. Right. Okay. Will the Tau be showing signs of mutation over time depending on the planets they're inhabiting? So basically,
I see no reason why not.
Abhumans are a thing. Abeldari are confirmed to be a thing as of the third Fabius Bile novel.
And we know that the Tau of different worlds have different temperaments. So the Violans are hot-blooded, whereas the Tau of Cesea are a lot calmer. So personality variation by location is already a thing. Why not get genetic with it?
It's like it might just start something similar. Like, oh, Tau on this world are shorter or taller on this world, or more muscular. Basically, it's like emphasizing a more deeply ingrained genetic caste traits kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they already have got genetic mutations with the caste system. They genetically evolved in 5 different directions. So it's absolutely a thing. And then they do have variations in skin tone already. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that will happen eventually. I don't think we'll see it in lore, but
are we talking like, what about Tau with tentacles?
Like I say, I don't think we'll ever see it come to miniature. I think it will. I don't think we'll get like the equivalent to Ogryns or Ratlings or Beastmen or anything like that.
No, we'll probably need 10,000 years at least.
Oh yeah, yeah, give it a chance. But I think we'll see it in lore of like these Tau have evolved in a different way based on the situation of the world they live on. So you might want to reflect that in their paint scheme. But I don't think we'll see unique miniatures for it at any point unless it's a named character.
These Tau evolved in a higher gravity world and they became shorter. They became halflings. But blue. Towelets, there we go. Toilets.
Good.
Right. Do Tech Marines get trained by other Forge worlds than Mars?
Probably, if logistically convenient.
I always...
After all, it says they get trained by the Martian priesthood, isn't it? Not by Mars.
Yeah, I was going to say...
Wasn't there a thing that Tech Marines get specifically sent to Mars to be trained?
I think if logistically convenient, then they should. But I think these days especially, you make do with what you have. Because that was actually
a huge plot point in one of the Horus Heresy novellas. Things like Cybernetica, like, there was a bunch of, like, Loyalist Legion Tech Marines fighting on Mars. Like, there was like an Ultramarine and a Salamander, like a Raven Guard, and it's like,
I certainly think it will have been doctrine for a fair old while, but as the Imperium got bigger and as it sort of fell apart, I think there'll have been certain chapters and certain groups who just either fell out with Mars and thus were cut off and had to improvise, or just logistically couldn't make it. Like if you sent a Tech Marine off to Mars, by the time they got back, they might be 200 years old.
Well, apparently,
so
I'm just having a quick look on Lexicanum, and it says that they are sent to Mars for 30 years of training.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that was certainly true pre-Maledictum. I think post-Maledictum, it's just not feasible. Yeah, because
the source of the 5th edition Space Marine Codex.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
So
some people will look at that as cursed because it was the Matt Ward book.
But that's
not me personally.
I do remember that it's saying they were sent to Mars in stuff before the 5th edition book. Like I think it was like mentioned the 2nd edition book at the very least as well.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not trying to shade the breasted sort of. And just some people will look at that book and say it's an abomination because of who wrote it, which is not fair for the record.
No, of course.
Poor Mr. Ward. If only he'd not done the Grey Knights, I think he would have got away with it.
Poor Wib. The joke being Wib's name is Matt Ward.
Yeah.
But he's
not the Matt Ward. He is a Matt Ward. But yeah, it's like there's like that artwork from the Cybernetica novel where it had like all these tech priests all fighting on Mars during the Martian secession.
Yeah, the schism,
yeah.
Schism. And which book was that in again? Oh, I've not read that one. That's why it's drawing a blank. That'll be interesting, though. So that's kind of set alongside the same time as the novel Mechanicum.
I believe so, yeah. I think it's like a side story kind of thing, because it's only in like a novella.
Yeah, I think it fits alongside. Is it called Mechanicum?
The novel's called Mechanicum. The novella's called Cybernetica. The novella was also added to the anthology Burden of Loyalty.
Oh, okay.
It's in there along with Perpetual, Binary Succession, Interexile, Ordo Sinister, Heart of Pharos, the 13th Wolf, and the Wolf King.
That sounds an interesting anthology, that one. I'll need to check that one out, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I didn't like the fucking Heart of the Pharos. It was such... It just contradicted everything in the Pharos novel, pretty much.
It wouldn't be the Heresy without contradicting itself.
No. Like when people say, like, oh, the Pharaohs didn't attract the Nids, like, it literally says at the end of Pharaohs that was literally the epilogue. It's showing the Nids being attracted by the Pharaohs beacon.
That's a day. See, that's an example of breaking a big myth, isn't it? In a bit of a bad way. I
wouldn't even say it was a bit of a bad. I thought it was a nice. I thought it was actually a really well done epilogue, because like in the events of Pharaohs Noah, like the Pharaohs beacon was overloaded by Barabbas Dantioch to stop Krukesh the Pale and the Night Lords in that regard, and then the epilogue you just see like, you know, he describes how like monstrous behemoths just drifting silently in the void, a flash of light at a distance, like eyes register the energy, they flicker and die, and then it just says, and attracted by the light, the great devourer turns towards a new source of prey.
Yeah, and it's really nice of setting up the guys. Like, why are the Tyranids here? If it weren't for the Horus Heresy and the Imperium turning on itself, there would have been no Tyranids. And think about what the state of the galaxy could have been if there'd been no Tyranids and there'd been no Horus Heresy. Suddenly, what's the state of play? If there was a Horus Heresy and no Tyranids, suddenly the Eastern Fringes looks completely different. And it's a really fun of like you're bringing your own destruction upon yourself through your actions and the unintended consequences. It's quite a nice payoff.
No, I see what I mean now. Yeah, that is a good twist. That. Yeah, like saying the heresy ruined everything.
It's all Magnus's fault.
Yeah.
So
you keep saying.
People keep saying he did nothing wrong, but he did everything wrong.
Yeah,
accidentally.
Who doth protest so much, you know.
I've never denied that Magnus messed up. He did, but he didn't do it on. It's not his fault. He did it by accident.
Paid with good intentions.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, accident.
Magnus laid the paving.
Oh no, Tzeentch laid it.
I mean, we all remember Magnus. The meme, you know, the picture of the sign saying "Don't fuck up" and Magnus going, "Well, this looks hard."
Yeah, I know.
Right, we've got like 150 now. Okay, let's find another question. Question for me: who's the weird guy I was talking about last episode? Ian Watson. There we go. That's the question answered.
Wasn't there a question? I saw a question about Draknien. I remember. That I quite like the look of.
Yeah. Why is Draknien so flipping powerful if he represents the first human murder, given how humanity would have been a psychically weak species when it happened? Did he gain power from all the subsequent human murders? And is it possible that it's not that Draknien is powerful that the Emperor couldn't kill him, but that due to representing the first human murder, Draknien cannot be killed by a human, and for all intents and purposes, the Emperor is still human?
Yeah, so sort of like, where is Draknien's power coming from? And what is it more? I think in some ways, it's not what Draknien is, it's what Draknien represents that makes it so powerful, I think. It represents the fact that man is twisted and evil and willing to turn on itself, and thus it is so powerful because the most powerful species in the galaxy is turning on, is so capable of destroying itself that yes, the entity that represents that murder is going to be powerful.
Yeah, and part of the theme of the power of the warp as a reflection and mirror of reality is the stronger the emotion, the more powerful the imprint of the warp. So, so the idea that something born of murder that then gains power through every other murder that happens in history is a very
There's also the fact that
the
very first murder was also an act of fratricide. So that's going to add a whole bunch of other, emotions to the mix. Things like, betrayal and stuff like that as well. Being murdered by your own brother, kind of thing. That's going to be even more potent than just randomly going up to someone just going, "Hey, stab."
Yeah, it's something that's clearly been either born of an instance of loss of control, or it's been completely planned, premeditated. It wasn't random, and that echo, even if it was just one echo, is a powerful thing. And it's the same with Doombreed. Doombreed is so powerful because he is the first of his kind. Be'lakor is so powerful because it was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And Drak'Nien is so powerful because it was the first.
Yeah. And the idea that for these really strong emotions, they then, in the warp, it's a bit like a black hole. All the other emotions of that type get sucked into the same place, and it coalesces into one location.
Though I also like the idea. Sorry.
Or one being, I was going to say.
Yeah, and I like the idea that the comment raised of it because it was born of human murder. It is therefore unkillable by humans because it represents death at the hands of a human, and it represents Cain and Abel. I think the first murder is Cain and Abel. I'm willing to be wrong on that. Is that right?
I think that it was very thematically similar, if nothing else.
In Abrahamic religions, it's the first murder story, isn't it?
Yeah. What a lot of the Western audience it was originally written for would recognise as Cain and Abel. Then I'll rephrase that.
Yeah.
But based on that, the idea of so it represents something so fundamental, and that is the idea of humans turning on themselves. Of course, how can humans destroy what they created? And that is so ingrained in their own psyche of killing one another, especially at a time like the Horus Heresy, where literally humanity is turned on and eating itself on a galactic scale. Of course, a human is not going to be able to put an end to a being that represents exactly what's happening right now. I can understand that, whether it's a demon or not. And I know they're immortal, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, given time, only got time for one more, so.
All right.
I'll try and find one that's not overly long.
We've done enough long rants.
Okay. What kind of gameplay features would you like to see added to Space Marine 2?
Oh. I think I would quite like a little bit in terms of, obviously, the squad. If you're going to work with the squad, can the squad actually be worth something? Because Leandros and Sidonis, for all they were good characters, did absolutely nothing for gameplay. They were set dressing. Yeah. The ability to customize them would be quite cool in terms of changing their weapons to suit a play style and creating sort of a more like you feel like a squad that work together as a cohesive unit rather than some random guys supporting your big bad beat stick.
Just make it Mass Effect 2.
A little, maybe a bit of like Mass Effect 2 I'm not saying go full RPG with it, but just make your squad mates be worth it.
Commandable as well.
Yeah, possibly commandable, or at least having like going into like a bit for set pieces in terms of, okay, this is what's happening. What do you want us to do, Captain? and they will do a job for you that will influence the battle in a certain way, even if it's only
What
for
are your
set
orders,
pieces.
brother Captain? Beat the shit out of Leandros.
Accurate. Obviously, you're going to be playing as an Ultramarine, but I'd also like the Belisarian Furnace to be a gameplay mechanic, where if you get low on health, like maybe once per fight, or maybe once per chapter, or in story events during certain boss fights, that you can trigger the Belisarian Furnace if you get low on health, or maybe when you die the first time, you're almost like in, maybe not like Sekiro, where you get a second go, but you get like a second baby health bar, a last burst when you die, that allows you to fight again. You get a stat boost, and if you can kill, kind of like Borderlands, where if you go down, if you get a kill, you get back up again. Something like that, where you get one last boost, but to stay alive, you've got to do something.
So something to pull in the theme of Primaris Marines into the game.
Yeah, because you're playing as a Primaris, you should feel like a Primaris.
Does that also include the scene, though, where the only vehicle to escape the battlefield is a Land Raider and it won't let you in?
Ouch. Ouch.
Also,
I'm just saying. It
also,
must have
just
happened.
a reminder as well that the Silver Templars Primaris chapter have Land Raiders in their vehicle pool.
Lol.
And that's official in their Force Organisational chart in their Index Astartes, so...
Yeah.
Some quality writing there.
What about you two?
Consistency.
Anything that you want to see in Space Marine 2?
Well, I think I've already said it. I'd like to see the bit where one of the Primaris Marines uses a Land Raider as a transport. That'll do me.
So not a bike then? Like a little push bike?
What, just treads on it? And
No, it's like,
collapses?
you know, there's like one of those little tiny little trikes that you get clowns riding at the circus. They do a little bell, like ding ding. Just like.
Oh yeah, it's like quite neat, wouldn't it? I don't know. Okay, more serious take on that. What'll be an interesting gameplay? I don't know, because I mean, Space Marine did so much so well, didn't it, in terms of a third-person,
I'd
like
like to
combat
see
shooter.
some form of weapon customization.
Yeah, a lot of games
Yeah, like,
do that these
not
days.
not just have like
do
generic bolter, stalker bolter, vengeance launcher, aka the most useless weapon in the fucking game. Let's say like maybe upgrade your bolter to have like a stalker style suppressor or scope or something for make it long range, or like give it like different kinds of ammunition, because we know that canonically there's like dozens of types of bolt rounds, like inferno rounds, acid rounds, tripwire rounds, etc. So like customize like what kind of loadout you want per mission. Like, do you want the standards explosive bolts? Do you want solid slugs? Do you want the acid ones to like melt shit with, or what?
Yeah,
And you thought I wanted Mass Effect 2.
Yeah. Another thing they could do, thinking about the Primaris theme, is they could have missions where you can choose your armor type. So
Yeah, because Mark 10 is modular.
Yeah, so as well as like just having your standard like balanced inverted commas,
Just go for
Mark
aggressor
10 armor.
constantly. There you go.
You could go aggressor. You could go, what are the heavy ones called?
Gravis.
Yeah, Gravis armor. Yeah.
Or you could go for a more stealth Vanguard build and have a grapple gun and do it that way.
Yeah.
Phobos build.
Yeah.
That could be really fun for multiplayer as well, because you've got different play styles built in. Instead of having classes where you've got tactical, heavy, and assault, you've got different armor play styles that allow you to do it. It's the same idea where you've got classes, but instead of the classes being about the weapon options you have, it's about the armor you use, which means that you get different health bars, but you also get different active abilities you can trigger. Something like that if they go for multiplayer.
I think that'll be great. Yeah. And be a great use of all the, all the assets they've created for Primaris Marines.
Also, would it be a bit gratuitous to ask for an ATV driving segment, or would that be a bit daft?
Oh, well, come on. If it can work in Halo, it can work in Space Marine.
Yeah, but Halo's not that good, though.
Aye.
Oh,
hot take. Hot take.
Good thing you're on the other end of Discord. I don't know.
I mean, I never had an Xbox, so I never played Halo, but still, that's
I had the first two.
take.
I had the first two Halo games on my original Xbox. And I did not like them at all. I just.
Well, you missed the best one. So there you go.
And on that bombshell,
and also until you've played Halo Infinite on an Xbox Series X, then that is an amazing game. Incredible.
Have you got the £400 required?
I'll stick with Mass Effect Andromeda, thanks. You know, the redhead stepchild of the family.
Yeah, there's a fair few. Oh, the comments roasted me for that hot take last week. The comments went at me for that.
By saying Andromeda wasn't that bad.
Yeah, you see the amount of comments in there, they're just slacking me off. There's like 5 or 6 different comments like, sorry, Tactica, but you're wrong here. I don't mind. I knew I was making a hot take, but like, if I've made a hot take about Andromeda being not bad, you saying Halo is bad is a really hot
Did anyone
take.
agree with me in regards to the fact that Drac and Vetra were the best bits about Andromeda?
Nobody meant. I think maybe their names came up in passing. You can read the comments yourself, I'm sure, in your own time, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But yes, please don't cancel Remleiz for not liking Halo. And on that bombshell, I think we've reached a perfect point to wrap up episode 146 of Adeptus Podcastus. Thank you very much to LeakyCheese for joining us and for all your heresy-related insights. It's basically the reason we got you on the show, and you've not disappointed. It's been excellent chatting with you once again.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure coming on, guys. Thanks again for the invitation.
No problem whatsoever. So, obviously, lots of things to come, and obviously we'll let you know in the near future in terms of the future plans for the show and all that stuff. 150 is 8 weeks away. Oh, that's going to be fun. But we will get there in due course. If you have any questions you'd like to leave for us, please leave them in the comments below with the word question, and we will do our best to answer what we can in the next episode. But for now, thank you very much for watching. This has been Tactica Imperialis.
On 40k Theories. That's your cue, Leaky.
And this has been LeakyCheese.
And we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.